Okay, hi everyone. Thank you all for coming back today. And Mayor Rawn, thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's great to see so many familiar faces.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to get started with a question that's going to ground us in community. And it is, Fayetteville residents are feeling the strain of rising rents, high purchase costs, and limited housing options. From your perspective as mayor, which I love saying, what role should community-driven ideas play in shaping the city's housing strategy?
Thank you for that question. And this is one I've been thinking about a lot because oftentimes housing becomes such a technical conversation. We have so many conversations at the council level, and I see two of my city council, my two favorite city council people in the audience, but three. My two favorites, and then Councilperson Wiedeker is also I'm just kidding, I missed you. So I see three city council people in the audience. He was hiding back there. We often are reminded by Minister Jones, the councilperson from Ward 4, of that phrase, nothing about us without us. And housing is something that is for everyone and impacts everyone, whether you have it or you don't have it or you're in need of it. And I think it is easy to forget that it isn't just a policy, but it is impacting someone's lives, and so someone's life, everyone's life. And so I think that it is important that we listen to our community and the community have an opportunity to have this discussion because it forces us to remember how fundamental this is to people's everyday lives and not get lost in the bureaucracy of the process.
Thank you, Mayor. Let's look at the experience of renter. Arkansas is the only state without an implied warranty of habitability, leaving renters with very few protections. What can the city do through policies, partnerships, or advocacy to better support renters here in Fayetteville?
Thank you, Malath. So this is a question that gets brought up a lot, and I think everyone in the room knows, or at least I hope we all know, if not, you know now, that Arkansas has very little in the way of renter protections. And I want to ground us in the reality of, while there are things the city can do and does do, that is very much a state issue. And so there are certain things where the city is not the best place to go for that solution. It doesn't mean that we can't be helpful. So recently, Councilmember Moore from Ward 2 brought forward a resolution that after a lot of, or I guess an ordinance after a lot of back and forth work in the Ordinance Review Committee that helped make it a little bit more clear what your fees were going to be when you were a renter. And we pulled together, Councilperson Berna was instrumental in this as well. We pulled together a group of landlords and renters to talk about creating a form that would make that more transparent. That's not a panacea. That's not, I don't want to sit up here and say, oh, we did that, now everything's better. It is one tiny thing that I think can make it better. And it did something that I think is really important, and I understand why it's unpopular, but it brought together, it brought the landlords into the conversation. And I know that landlord often gets seen as a bad word, but the reality is we have a lot of people in Fayetteville that rent homes to people that want to do the right thing, that want to take care of people and want to be transparent. And so I think it's important that we remember them being a part of that conversation as well. We also do have building safety standards at the city. So there are, standards that you have to reach that you have to meet when you build something, and we get complaints about it a lot. But that is a way of protecting people. One of the things that we get criticized for a lot is, well, why is it taking so long? Why don't I have my certificate of occupancy already? Why isn't this ready? Why can't we just move in? This is an affordable home. You're costing me money. Well, we're also making sure it's safe. And so just because someone is building an affordable property doesn't mean we get to compromise safety standards. And so that is something that the city can do. And I really want to stress to people that everyone has a role to play. and not every role is a fit for every entity. So there are a lot of groups out there that advocate for renter protections and reform at the state level, and I appreciate the work that we do, or that they do. And that's not always going to be the city's role. And so I want people to put their energy into helping in the way that makes the most sense.
Thanks, yeah. I know that there's a lot that we can do together as a community to support state initiatives, so I hope we do that and don't just look to the city to try to fix that, but okay.
And sometimes the city isn't going to be the best help, right? So sometimes, having the mayor of Fayetteville or Fayetteville come out strong for something at the state level, that might not be what you want. I mean, the reality is this is very political, and so we also have to be strategic about the way we advocate for those things and when we use our voice and when we don't.
Yeah, that's definitely worth considering.
Sometimes sometimes Dee Dee going and calling her state representative, right? Or Bo or Sharon is going to be the better fit than asking, the city to take a stand on it.
Yeah.
So
Specifically because that might make the city just like
that might go for it. Right,
yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so moving into balancing policy and people. So, as we all know, housing policy can feel technical. We've got zoning codes, we've got financing, we've got subsidies, but people live the impacts of these things every day. How can the city ensure that community voices, especially those most affected, influence housing decisions in a real and lasting way?
Mm-hmm. I think we have to stop expecting that everyone can show up to a city council meeting and that can be the only way that we listen to. That can't be the only way we hear from our community. That is an important way. You can ask, my friend Bo Counts, he has showed up to his fair share of city council meetings, and he is able to do that, and that is great. Not everyone can do that, and so that cannot be, we can't act as if that's the end-all be-all for community engagement and that we've done our listening we just listen to who showed up at council. I think it's also important that we meet people where they are. So I think forums like this that are at different times of day, that are in different venues, are going to be really important to help the people that are making that policy remember the real impact that this has on people.
Speaking of policy, Fayetteville has taken steps, but the progress is slow. ADUs and small-scale infilling housing are allowed, but very few has actually been built. What barriers are preventing those options from becoming reality, and how could the city and community work together to overcome them?
So a couple of things. One, it is really hard to get financing for an ADU. So if you have the cash, if you've got $175,000 just burning a hole in your pocket or more, that ADU option is going to be great for you. If you don't, you are like me and like most of us, and even the luxury of even being able, let's even assume that you could even be able to consider to be in a position to get financing. It's really, really hard to do. It is harder to get financing for an ADU than it is for a single family home. I could go out and get financing for a 3,000 square foot house easier than I could get financing for a tiny home or an ADU. My friends that are in the banking industry could explain that and understand that better than I do. I'm not sure all of the reasons why, but I do know that it is true. So that is part of the problem. The other thing is, I think we run the risk of, this is such a, everybody's housing needs are different. And there is no one solution. And depending upon the audience, what someone needs in terms of housing is going to be different. And so I think we have made the mistake of, ADUs are an important piece of a puzzle, but it is a very large puzzle, and they are one piece. And so as proud as I am of what Fayetteville has done with ADUs, and how meaningful I think that is, we have to be realistic about that addresses just a little sliver of the problem. And so what I don't want us to do is hang our hat on this. We've got ADUs now. No one is going to be homeless. We've got ADUs now. Everyone is going to have their housing needs met. No, it is one piece of the puzzle. But I think that to maximize even that one piece, the financing, But we also have to think, how much time and energy and effort and political capital do we want to spend on ADUs when, even in the best case scenario, what's that going to, like, what's the impact that that's going to have overall? So,
Yeah. Well, okay, so this is a question on shared responsibility. So many see the housing crisis as too big for government alone to solve. What role do you see for local organizations, faith groups, universities, and everyday residents in tackling housing challenges alongside the city?
yeah, so, and I hope this doesn't sound like I'm speaking out of both sides of my mouth, because city government and government in general is going to be limited in what we can do. It doesn't mean we can't do more than we're doing, but it means that we're not going to be the mechanism, we're not the tool to fix everything. We have to work with nonprofit groups, whether they be faith-based or non-faith-based. We have to be able to work with different advocacy groups. We have to work with the private sector. I mean, I think that's why I think it was important that we did work with the landlords when we did when we passed the ordinance about the truth in leasing and the clearer fees. And we are gonna, things like financing that we just talked about with the ADU, the city can't make that happen. We have to work with the lenders and the bankers to be able to bring that forward. So the Pick Me Up program, I see Josh in the audience, he leads the Pick Me Up program. If you're not familiar with that, it's one of, I think, the best things the city does. I think it's so phenomenal. But that's an example of a partnership that we as the city would not be able to do alone without his organization. And so it, just as it is a puzzle in terms of the solutions needed, I think it is a puzzle in terms of the partners that are needed, and everybody has a role to play. And I think events like this are really important as well, and as a part of that.
I have a real quick follow-up question to that. In the financing piece, is that something that like the city can actually work with banks or lenders or things on, or is that more?
I think that is, I mean, I think we can be a convener through, events like this. I think that we can, provide education about that, but I think that's really an issue that that industry needs to solve.
Thank you, Mara. Let's end by imagining the future of Fayetteville. If Fayetteville were to become a model or community-driven housing solution in the next 5 years, what would success look like to you, and how can residents help get us there?
Success to me, would look like a variety of housing needs, and it would look like people in the community that understand that success in one area does not take away from success in another. So some people, so let's take tiny homes, for example. Those are a solution that are going to meet the needs of some people in our community, and if we're able to achieve that, we should celebrate that success. More small one-bedroom homes are a success. Right? More homes that are for seniors are a success. Workforce housing is a success. And so just because there is movement in one type of housing stock doesn't mean that, like, not every solution is going to meet your needs specifically, but we have to work in a whole lot of areas because, like I said, it is a puzzle. And so it's an area in which everyone has, whether it's a duplex or an apartment, where everybody is able to rent a home. I want us to stop acting as if renting is bad, or as if renting is always a pathway or a stop on the journey towards home ownership. Sometimes it is, and that's a good thing. Sometimes people are always going to be renters, and that's okay too. So I want us to kind of shift the rhetoric around that. And then two things that I'm looking forward to that I want to just preview is through the home program, which the home grant that the city has been working to award. Those results are going to become public in the next little bit, and I'm almost at time, but I do want to say this. One of those things is going to be a down payment assistance program, and so I think that that's really, really meaningful to people and can be very helpful for home buyers, whether they be first-time home buyers or just home buyers that need that little bit of a boost for down payment assistance. Again, that is a good thing. It is not going to help everybody, but it is going to help that group. And then hopefully there are other solutions that help other groups as well. Another thing that the city is launching within the next month is an RFP of publicly owned, city-owned land, where we say this is land that we are not using. I should say pending council approval. That this is land that we are not using. Okay, you know, whether you be a nonprofit or a group in the private sector, what could you do with this to deliver a housing solution? If you had this land and the cost of the land was not a barrier to you and it was pre-entitled, what could you do to make this work? And then the other thing I will say is that there are short-term wins and there are longer-term wins. And it is for the longer term, which I think that we are tasked with as elected officials, to looking at not just those quick and easy wins that make a difference right now, but also setting the stage for longer term wins. We can't have that housing conversation if we're not also talking about infrastructure. So when we make investments in infrastructure and you see the city doubling down on investments in water and sewer, I want to invite you to not think they should be spending that money on housing, and I instead want you to invite you to think that, wow, these investments are going to help solve this housing crisis in the long term, because future homes can now be built because there's adequate infrastructure to do so. And so that's something that a lot of people don't immediately tie to housing, but I think it's important to realize. So, is that it?
All right, Mayor Rawn, thank you so much. I'm so excited to hear about this. The down payment assistance program, I think that's something that's, to learn about that, to get a hair preview of that, I think that's the exact kind of thing that we're hoping to hear generated here today, because that is something that is an actionable idea that the city has the capacity to potentially implement, as well as the request for proposals. I mean, that's so exciting to hear. I can't wait to see what ideas come out of that.
Thank you.
But thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it.